Hello and good morning to everybody, and thank you so much for joining. Welcome to our virtual dialogue on inclusive and participatory climate and disaster risk finance and transfer. Thank you to all those who are flexible enough to join us online. As most of you know, this event was supposed to be held in person today, but owing to the situation in the country, we decided to postpone the physical event and have a small discussion online. Also, welcome to everyone who joined us on Facebook. This discussion on inclusive and participatory climate and disaster risk finance and transfer is organized by SLYCAN Trust as part of the project of multi-actor partnership on climate and disaster risk financing and preparedness in the context of the Intra-Resilience Global Partnership. This project is supported by the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development and is implemented by SLYCAN Trust in collaboration with Fisheries, a local partner in Sri Lanka. Before moving forward with the agenda, my name is Sanasha Yakanaka. I'm a Program and Communications Manager here at SLYCAN Trust. There are a few housekeeping rules from us. Kindly do rename yourselves on Zoom if you're able to indicate your name and organization. We also have a registration form for the day. I shared it previously on the chat. I will do so as soon as I'm done speaking. Please do keep yourself muted at all times unless you're speaking, of course. If you want to turn on your video and that doesn't interrupt your feed, please, you're more than welcome to do so. And finally, this meeting is recorded and is live streamed on Facebook. So with that in mind, we move forward with the first item on the agenda, which is a welcome and introduction to this virtual dialogue by our Executive Director at SLYCAN Trust, Ms. Vasudha Vijayanayaka.
Hello, Sanasha. Good morning, everyone. Just to get my screen sharing on, a second. Okay, I hope everyone can see this.
Yes, it should just go full screen, but sure.
Let me try. This usually ends up. Right, okay. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, and sorry that we are not able to meet in person like previously planned, but I'm sure we'll have a good conversation. So I'm Vasudha Vijayanayaka. I'm the Executive Director of SLYCAN Trust, and I also work on this project as part of the team that's focusing on climate and disaster risk management and risk transfer. So the project, as part of which we are organizing this, is called multi-stakeholder partnerships on climate and disaster risk financing and preparedness in the context of the Intra-Resilience Global Partnership. Before I go into discussing the project, I'll just give a brief introduction to those who haven't been part of our previous events, what SLYCAN Trust is. So SLYCAN Trust is a nonprofit think tank focusing on climate change, sustainable development, biodiversity and ecosystem conservation, social justice and animal welfare. And we, right. So we work on evidence-based research, communication outreach, legal and policy analysis, multi-stakeholder engagement, capacity building and knowledge sharing, and advocacy. And I'm really sorry if you hear the dog barking, the neighborhood dog is barking, sorry about that. So we work on different aspects through our divisions. So we have 5 divisions we work as part of the work that we do. And these are the key areas that we focus on. So as you can see, we work on youth, vulnerable communities, policies and frameworks such as the SDGs, Sendai framework, Paris Agreement, UNFCCC work, and then also livelihood development, economic diversification. So we work on a range of things that connect with the work that we're going to be discussing today, because risk management goes across different dimensions when we are talking about climate change, disaster management, as well as livelihood and vulnerabilities being addressed. The project that connects to the work today is linked to the Insuresilience Global Partnership. For those who are not familiar with this, Insuresilience Global Partnership is something that's functioning as a network or a coalition and has different actors working together. I'll go into the breakdown of these actors in my next slide. InsuResilience has the vision to strengthen the resilience of developing countries to protect the lives and livelihoods of poor and vulnerable people from the impacts of climate shocks and disasters. And this is done through enabling faster and more reliable and cost-effective responses. And this is also through multi-actor partnerships because there are many countries that are partners of this. The number has increased drastically since the slide was prepared. Sorry about that. And then also 22 private sector organizations. So we have countries, private sector organizations, multilateral institutions, civil society institutions, academic institutions, a lot of different actors working together with a common objective. And it also aims to build stronger relationships to address vulnerabilities. And one of the key priorities of 2021 or the next few years has been how impacts could be assessed, how evidence-based impacts assessments could be done to ensure that the vulnerabilities are addressed, and also how actors could work together and bring stronger partnerships so these impacts are raised, and also how gender responsive actions could happen. The project, of course, is a global project, and we have partners in Africa as well as in other areas, the Caribbean, as well as Asian countries. And it's funded by the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development. We have global partners as well as a national partner. So SLYCAN Trust is a member since 2017, I believe. Of the Intra-Resilience Global Partnership. So we were one of the first civil society organizations to be part of this. I forget the year, sorry about that, that we became partners. The work that we do under this project, we focus mainly on the agriculture sector, but it also has cross-cutting aspects and components that relate to other sectors. So for example, risk management, risk transfer could be in the context of coastal and marine ecosystems as well. So that goes across many other dimensions of work that we're doing. But for the narrow focus of this project, it would focus on agriculture sector and livestock. We have activities focusing on policy and research, knowledge management and capacity building. And the thematic aspects are mainly the risk management and risk transfer options, which has a link at the national level as well as the international level. So we focus on analyzing the existing climate risk transfer processes, the mechanisms, how we can enhance these, whether there are different options that could be introduced with multi-actor partnerships, identifying gaps and needs, and then closing them. So these are some of the work that's being done as part of the project. So the direct target groups include communities and people that are vulnerable to climate change. So mainly the farmers, young people, women of the farmer community, and then relevant actors involved in designing and implementing climate processes and policies in the country as well as international level. So this includes government actors, private actors, universities, civil society organizations, youth organizations. I think most of you have been involved with us in the process, so I wouldn't go too much into detail on this. But it's an open call for anyone who's working on climate disaster risk management to work with us going forward, because this is a project that's, it's a 2.5-year project, so we have 1.5 years more, and it ends in April 2022. But the work doesn't end there, so there are a lot of overlapping activities that happen through other projects as well. So if you're interested in climate and disaster risk transfer options, finance, do get in touch with us. Just to give a perspective on how this connects with the global level engagement, for those who are, I'm assuming everyone knows what the Paris Agreement is, but just a brief introduction. UNFCCC, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, is focused on addressing impacts of climate change, and that's a law, international law that Sri Lanka is part of. And in 2015, we also signed the Paris Agreement. And this focuses on strengthening what the work of UNFCCC is doing, as well as being one of the first commitments of countries, like all countries working together with nationally determined contributions, that's voluntary contributions and commitments to address climate impact. So under the Paris Agreement, it has different focus areas. So we focus on mitigation, adaptation, means of implementation like finance. It also has loss and damage. So loss and damage focuses on those impacts that have already created losses and damages, which cannot be addressed through adaptation. And it focuses on, under the Brazil International Mechanism, as well as areas in the Paris Agreement, on early warning systems, emergency preparedness. And out of these, we have risk insurance facilities like risk transfer that is discussed. So the 5-year rolling back plan of the Executive Committee, which focuses on loss and damage, has as the key areas, comprehensive risk management approaches, finance-related topics, and also we focus on hazards, slow onset impacts, as well as non-economic losses. So the work that we're doing under this project connects to this as well. So the discussion today would connect with the work of the Paris Agreement, and this is how the project is a project which has implications that are global. So that's it. I just wanted to give a brief introduction. It became a bit longer than planned, but thank you for bearing with me. And I hope we have a great discussion today. Over to you, Sinasha.
Thank you very much, Vasita, for that introduction. Before we move forward, I'm just going to continuously remind everybody with a few housekeeping rules. If you could, I know most of you all have, but if you could kindly rename yourselves to maybe indicate your name and your organization, it might give us an idea of who's in the room with us. So just to carry forward the discussion, and also to kindly fill out the registration form that we have for the day. So when we are taking this discussion forward to hopefully something in person, it would be good to have you back as well. So moving forward with our agenda, we now have a brief presentation on the preliminary project findings and areas of focus by our Senior Program Manager, Mr. Dominus Lampisamadakot. Damita?
Yeah, Sinasha, shall I go from my screen?
Yes, please.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. As Vasita mentioned, we have been working for almost 1.5 years on this project, engaging with different type of stakeholders. We conducted series of engagement activities, which I would go show in this slide. So within the past 1.5 years, we have been engaging with farmers, interviewing them, having discussions, observing their work. So we have engaged with more than 250 plus farmers in Trincomalee and Anuradhapura district. Our focus was mainly on the dry zone. And we had focus group discussions over 10 to probably more than 10 focus group discussions with different farmer communities, youth groups, and also farmer societies. We had capacity building sessions, training workshops. Then we had several interactions with the value chain actors like the millers, the equipment providers, other government and provincial officials. Then we had engagement with the national and provincial level stakeholders in the form of workshops, small expert group discussions, then also online discussions with several actors like including the international participants on financing, private sector involved. So past 1.5 years have been quite engaging in different forms to gather information, collect data, share the findings. What we are presenting today is based on these interactions with a multitude of stakeholders, which the project is also aims at achieving a multi-stakeholder partnership in climate risk financing. So these are the two areas that we work mainly in, that we get the ground level information from. A whole segment of stakeholders engaging farmers, farmer society leaders, paddy collectors, millers, government officials like the agriculture inspectors, the agriculture production research assistants, national level bankers, financing institutions, ministries, secretaries. So yeah, so those are the key actors that we've engaged with. If I directly go to the key findings, it was in the form of interviews, data collection, qualitative data gathering, and discussions with experts. So based on that, I'll show a bit of pictures for you to get an idea of the type of interaction engagement we had. These are some of the workshops we did at the field level. Probably most of you all must have joined us in the workshops that we had in Colombo or online, but these are the ones that we did at the ground level. Getting back to what came out of the findings, I'm very briefly presenting, focusing on the financing and risk management issues, gaps faced by different actors in the whole value chain. If you look at the farmers, like the overall farming, we focus more on paddy farmers, but this could apply to the others as well. If you look at the whole process, initially at the sowing stage, the greatest climate risk they face is a heavy rain, which destroys all their work in a splash 1 or 2 days. The major issue here faced by farmers is lack of quality getting seed paddy on time. This is due to two things. One is seed paddy not being available. Second one, them not having, it's not only not having seed paddy, also not being able to prepare their lands on time due to lack of machinery, where they don't have funds to do the land preparation. So this change, delay in preparation, causes them to become a victim of changes in the weather pattern due to climate change activities. So what could be done here? Their suggestion was like, if they have what we call working capital, the seasonal finances available for them in a easily accessible manner, they could face this situation much better than what they're doing now. Then during the paddy growth period, like it's mainly the diseases, weeds, pest attacks and all that. Again, due to climate change, this has increased. Here, why this happens again is the initial delay that occurs is the one that causes the impact to be higher. So again, uh, one thing could be done here is like farmers actually, when they don't have proper seed paddy, they go for the wrong seed paddy, which is wrong timing. Like for example, if you're supposed to do only 3 months paddy, if the government recommendation is given this season, go for 3 or 3.5 months. Sometimes they use longer or shorter variations because they don't have it. Then their cultivation is prone for disease and pest attacks. So this lack of information and lack of being able to respond to it in appropriate time is a key issue. And during the harvesting, again, heavy rain is the key factor that affects them. Again, what happens here is like, several issues, like main thing is the storage thing. Farmers do not mainly store, it's the local collector that is storing the paddy. Also, they also do not store for a longer period of time. They, within a week or so, they dispose their collection to large scale millers. So here, if they have capacity to store, they can gain better financial advantages, because if the rains set in, they would want to get dispose their collection as soon as possible, causing them financial losses, which in turn affects the farmers and their income. So having appropriate storage facilities, financial support for this is very important. And at this stage, actually, insurance schemes can also come into play, because the paddy collectors, local level collectors, are much more capable of having insurance schemes and paying. So other key general issues with regard to financial sector that was found is like, there's lack of financial literacy, not being able to gain advantage of the existing financial tools. The farmers very rarely, I mean, they do engage, but there's much more opportunities for them to engage. One clear thing that was highlighted is like they are afraid of the banks. They are afraid of the type of documentation and other processes that they have to go through. Some mentioned like the premium, especially for the insurance schemes, are high, which is not the government insurance schemes, but the other insurance schemes. But here again, we found out lack of awareness. The benefits that they could get is not there. Therefore, there is sort of a fear in getting into this. And if you look at the overall risk bearing proportion of this entire value chain, more than 90% of the risk is borne entirely by the farmers. For everything else that they use during the system, the value addition, the service provider gets paid. Therefore, the entire risk, there's very little transfer of risk from farmer to others. This is one major gap that we found. uh, Other value chain actors, like if you look at this top three, plowing, sowing, and harvesting, uh, all three of these value chain actors, very little risk is borne by them. They do sometimes give on credit these services to the farmers, but within very short period of time they recover, or from whatever the income that farmer gets, this money somehow gets recovered. So this in the top three value chain actors, they have little risk. So if we can find out, ways of transferring this risk, it will be much more. The system could sustain in a better way. Uh, there's a risk borne by the local collectors. I'm not talking about the larger collectors, but the local collectors and millers. They are bearing a risk, especially during the rain period. They get wet, harvest wet paddy, which transfers into loss when they add value, that they convert it into rice. So that risk is again mainly due to lack of capacity for drying space not available right now. If you look at the local level, most of the paddy is dried using the putting it along the road, so it's prone to elephant attacks. uh, these things have increased. So if you have proper storage facilities, drying facilities, this could be much reduced. Then if we look at the banker side, we like since the major focus is on the financing tools. uh, Linking with what farmers said, lack of knowledge among farmers on benefits on maintaining financial credibility with the banks was a key issue mentioned by the farmers. They take a loan, once they find they cannot, they cut off interactions with the bank and go to another one. So their credibility goes down. But what bankers say, local level, excuse me for the background noise, what the local level bankers say is, like, if the farmer comes to them and talks with them on adjusting their loan, making maybe getting extending the loan period, adjusting the payment scheme, this would be much more beneficial for the bank and as well as the farmer, that they won't lose their credibility and would not go into. So this the fact of maintaining credibility, creditworthiness, is not known by the farmers, which in turn, after one or two loan schemes with the banks, they completely lose the credibility and lose the capacity of getting further loans. So this is a key factor that was highlighted by the bankers that should be improved. Lack of interaction with the farmer societies. Now, giving loans to individuals, sometimes small scale loans to individual farmers, is very difficult. But what they need, for a farmer who would cultivate an acre or two, they would need only 20,000-30,000 initial funding. So that taking through a bank with all the process is very difficult. But if the farmer societies could come to the banks, get large loan chunks are disbursed to through them to small scale farmers, that process would be much efficient. But this is not happening well, it seems, as mentioned by the bankers, local level banking officials. Then low interaction with the government officials. This is mainly the government right now sends good seasonal forecasts. But there is a gap, which I would speak later in terms of localizing it. But if this seasonal forecast is known, the bank is much more capable of assessing the risk borne by the farmer. What sort of uh, crops are recommended to cultivate, what are not recommended. So once this is known, they would know which crops carry a higher risk, which crops does not carry a high risk. So this information is not being shared effectively among the stakeholders. Then again, for the insurance providers, there are some insurance schemes provided through banks and other insurance sectors. Some of the banks are capable of providing this insurance things, like through their own systems, but some are supposed to provide reinsurencing facilities. What has been found is, like, the reinsurance requirements are high, therefore they are unable to yeah, provide the insurance product. This is one main reason is the lack of market size to operate a feasible insurance product. But then again, if you look at the requirement, there seems to be sufficient demand. So matching this up with other legal aspects is a critical thing. So there should be opportunity to enhance private public-private partnerships, co-financing mechanisms for these tools. Uh, Also to develop the risk profile, like for the banks, and also to understand individual farmers as well as the regional risk profiles. This is an important tool that should be developed for the financial tools to operate better. In terms of the government and local and national level government actors, there's good national level seasonal forecasting, but this has to get localized. So that capacity is a bit low at the ground level. If this can be enhanced, it will be benefit the farmers much better. Knowledge on financial tools that are available, the especially the agriculture officers, they are focused on technical aspects of agriculture, but if they have some sort of knowledge on these other tools, it may be the agriculture officer, it may be the development officer at the village level. If they know about these tools, it can benefit the farmers much better. Understanding of the different risk mechanism and sectoral policies, lack of knowledge on different policies from different sectors among the grassroots level actors of government officers is a gap that was identified, which is affecting their beneficiaries. Then overall assessment of protection of gap and losses on loss and damages. So the overall scope in terms of different policies on integrating loss and damage into the overall risk management portfolio is low. So these are a few gaps we found out during the process. So one of the main objectives of today's discussion is how probably to prioritize some of these, understand what actions should be taken in the future. Yeah, so leaving room for questions and answers, I will stop from here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Damita, and welcome to everyone who's joined us during the presentation as well. Just once again, I would kindly like to request you to perhaps rename yourselves on Zoom. However, if you're unable to do so, you could just type in your name and organization on that chat, and we could do that from our end. Also, welcome to everyone who's joined us on Facebook. We hope you'll be able to join us for the discussion as well. And also, finally, just one more housekeeping rule. We have a registration form for the day. I have dropped the link on the chat. I will be in it again. So if you could please fill that out, it would help us perhaps reach out to you following this discussion and, to continue the discussion with y'all. So moving on to our next item on the agenda, we have Dr. Ravi Fernando. He's a board member of the Sustainable Development Council of Sri Lanka. Furthermore, he is an alumni of the University of Cambridge. He holds a doctorate in business administration from the European Business School in Switzerland in 2016. He also serves on the boards of multinational corporations, including LLC Holdings, Ceylon Graphene Technologies, Aiken Sense Plantations, as well as Habitat for Humanity, UN Global Compact Sri Lanka, Ceylon Asset Management, and Global Strategic Corporate Sustainability Private Limited. Dr. Fernando will be speaking on strategic prioritization of the UN Sustainable Development Goals for national economic growth. Should you have any questions for Dr. Fernando, kindly do leave them here on the chat. We could take it forward after this session. And with that, over to you, Dr. Fernando. Thank you.
Hi, very good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me. We are a committee that's been formed very late in March, so these are very early days. And what I'm hoping to share with you is a strategic approach in terms of focusing on selected UN SDGs for national economic growth. And I must confess that this is a work in progress, and our committee is basically at a very early stage of developing this format. But one of the things that I was happy to listen to in terms of SLYCAN is what Damita presented, and also Varshita in terms of the Paris Agreement. I have some thoughts about that, which I will share with all of you. And these are personal thoughts, not necessarily the thoughts of everybody else. What I really want to basically share with all of you today is to share with you an approach which I think is necessary, because to mobilize sustainable finance into impacting UN SDGs, we need to be then not looking at a 1/17th. We need to be looking at uh, basically focusing on achieving a much more greater impact with the available finance, as opposed to be just dividing it by 1/17. So with those few words of introduction, I must also say, when I listened to Damitha's presentation, it was very clear to me that extreme weather events are beginning to impact Sri Lanka's agricultural sector, where we have, I think, about 40% of the land invested in agriculture. We have about 26% of Sri Lanka's workforce, but only contributing 6 to 7% of the GDP. And the dramatic rise of extreme weather incidents, when I look at the period 2000 to 2010, globally we saw about 150 extreme weather incidents per annum. This figure has now moved up to nearly 600 to 700. And one of the sectors that are most vulnerable is agriculture. And the question now is, how do we look at agriculture in a world that is going to have massive extreme weather incidents? So with those few words of introduction, let me move straight into sharing my first slide. And I think the first key point I want to make is that it's nearly 34 years since the Brundtland report, where she coined the term sustainable development. And in the report, Our Common Future, everything that everyone is talking about in terms of the risks of climate emergencies, the risks of extreme weather incidents, the risk of global warming, is all catalogued in this report, and it was catalogued 34 years ago. And one of the obvious factors is that probably we have had a lot of world leaders and national leaders and leaders of business not really understanding the impacts and the ramifications of that report. And this report keeps coming back and forth in different formats, including the very recent IPCC report in terms of climate emergency and impacts. And then we also look at the 2020 report that came out in terms of the UNEP sustainable, the emissions gap report that came out in basically highlighting how far off nations are and businesses in terms of achieving the Paris Agreement. So I think the bottom line is that we are beginning to see dramatic increases in temperatures. And as Greta Thunberg once put it, our house is on fire. And I think most people don't seem to be really reacting to, we are yet complacent, even when we have a figure like 18.3 degrees centigrade in the Antarctic. And the Arctic was recording 18 degrees centigrade. I mean, these are the coldest parts of the planet. And one of the key reports which gets updated recently and continues to get updated is the impact of the rise of temperatures of plus 1.5 degrees, 2 degrees, and 3.7 degrees, and its economic impact. And the economic impact, as mentioned down there in the slide, is $54 trillion if we cross 1.5 degrees centigrade, and we had 67 trillion degrees impact in terms of GDP if we cross 2 degrees. And I think we don't even need to think about 3.7 degrees, because then we are talking of massive issues. And all of these climate emergencies are happening. Sea levels are rising, and it's not as if Sri Lanka is excluded from the sea level rises. And the bottom line is that the continuous burning of fossil fuels, including Sri Lanka, continues to warm the planet, and the sea level rise is inevitable. So let's just look at how the world has tried to cope with this 1987 Our Common Future report, or the Brundtland report. And when we look at it, the first real attempt since I would say, the 1992 Earth Summit, and also probably Kofi Annan's attempt to raised the bar in terms of sensitizing world leaders, especially business leaders, because he began to realize that if the corporate sector didn't get engaged in the climate emergencies, that we are going to have a crisis. So the first attempt was probably the Millennium Development Goals of 2000 to 2015. And let's look at how many were achieved. I mean, when you look at the 8 Millennium Development Goals, only 2 were really achieved, and China contributed to the achievement of one of them. So if you have set out to achieve 8 goals and you achieve 2, then the next time round, what do? So there was a lot of hue and cry, and we saw the Paris Agreement being launched. And the bottom line for me as I look at the Paris Agreement is that out of the 17 goals and 200 odd action points, we are seeing a situation as at 2020 where in terms of nationally development commitments, we are seeing a major shortfall in terms of achievement when we look at the UNEP emissions gap report, where most nations as at 2020 versus the nationally determined commitments are between 60 and 70% of the target. So then we now have a period of 2021 to 2030, and the question is, what do we need to do then to achieve our NDCs, the nationally determined commitments? Then you're really talking of, number one, catching up a 67% gap, which is now opened up between 2015 and 2020, and then achieving 100% of the goals, NDCs between 2021 and 2022. So that is what has led us to begin to rethink in terms of strategic prioritization, because it is very clear that the task ahead and the ask ahead is becoming increasingly a near impossibility unless, of course, something dramatic happens. And I think COVID, to a certain extent, was something dramatic that happened. So the key cause is basically energy, which is contributing to the heating up of the planet in terms of carbon dioxide emissions. So addressing that particular area and looking at the sectors that contribute to almost 80% of the emissions, which are coming from electricity and heat production, transportation, agriculture, forestry, and other energy, has to be basically a priority area. Because if we don't do that, doing everything else could yet not be able to manage the crisis that is looming. So the approach that we are beginning to work on, and like I said, this is a work in progress. I'm also happy to note that one of my co-Sustainable Council members are on this Zoom event. And while the world is rushing towards renewable energy, and these are some examples, I think we, in our nation, also needs to accelerate this area quite dramatically. And if the major cause of the warming of the planet is coming from the sectors that I mentioned, then this has to be a priority area. So let me first share with you a few slides in terms of also the reality in terms of the whole forest cover situation globally and locally. So globally, we know that close to 60% of forest cover has been destroyed. In other words, we yet have about 30% of the verdant rainforests, etc., yet in place. But if you've been following what is happening in nations like Brazil, a nation that was contributing 20% of oxygen to the world, is suddenly now actually a net emitter. Since Bolsonaro's regime basically is destroying 60-70% accelerated destruction of the rainforests in Brazil. So if we take the global scenario where we yet have about 20-30% of forest cover left, when we look at Sri Lanka, we are down to 16%. So we have another area of focus that needs to be looked at. We are talking of about a 16% forest cover in Sri Lanka, and I think a day doesn't go when we hear of some of the things that are happening. So the key focus priority UN SDGs that we are beginning to look at in our committee, and this is, like I said, early days, work in progress since we were put together in March, is basically looking at these 5 goals as being priority from a Sri Lanka's future economic sustainability point of view. So let me start with goal number 7, which is affordable and clean energy. We know that today our energy mix is yet 70% non-renewable, and there's an urgent need for getting that focused on. And from a sustainability point of view, we believe that is an important one. If Sri Lanka also intends to become a manufacturing hub, having low cost energy is going to be a basic element in achieving that. Sri Lanka also has some amazing natural resources, like I mentioned here, which can be leveraged and can also be looked at from the perspective of sustainable innovation and JVs, and also being placed in the China One Belt, One Road. There's an opportunity to leverage that, but that also needs then a strategic focus, and the whole area of industry, innovation, and infrastructure is a goal that we believe needs to be getting some attention as we move forward. The other goals I've mentioned here is the area of forest cover, which I've already mentioned to you. And I'm happy that SLYCAN is looking at the whole area of agriculture. One of the new developments in the world of agriculture, as you know, is the area of precision agriculture, which is happening very much in Holland, where they're trying to pretty much mitigate some of the impacts of the increasing issues to do with extreme weather incidents. Water continues to be a massive issue for all of us in the world, and in Sri Lanka specifically, where we have about 20 of our 25 districts having water shortages of some sort. And this is accentuated as I listened to Damita's presentation in terms of extreme weather incidents. Either it is drought on one extreme, or it is an extreme weather incident of massive rainfall. And one of the organizations I work with is a plantation company, and we track rainfall days nationally because it directly impacts the agro production in the plantation companies. And what I am seeing is that while there's an increase in quantum of rain and rainfall days in the low country region, in the mid country and the up country regions, there's a massive decline. So we are having drought on one side, extreme rainfall in other places, but the net result is both of those impact agriculture. So water management is crucial. Just one other thought on the issue of renewable energy. We also have about 30,000 water bodies in Sri Lanka. And I'm beginning to see that countries like Singapore and South Korea are accelerating floating solar as an option, and probably an area for Sri Lanka to look at also, without losing too much of our land resources. And we are not talking of needing to do it everywhere. We are talking of probably selecting 100 or 200 water bodies that can be used for floating solar with battery. And in the renewable energy space, I'm a strong believer that looking at the area of solar plus battery is the way forward, and not just looking at it independently. And there are policies that are required to also help businesses and organizations to also look at this in a very aggressive manner. And last but not least, the 5th goal that I think needs to be prioritized is the issue of responsible consumption and production, an area that we need to really ratchet up in terms of policy. And I think I see all 5 of these goals, which I see as driving sustainable economic growth, directly or indirectly, needing to be prioritized. Like I said, this is early days in terms of policy and strategy. And these are 5 of those goals that we are working on within the team, and we will continuously try to improve it and work on it. In order for these goals to work, let's also look at some of these independently. So if you look at the renewable energy side, in terms of sustainable environmental management, I can see the president has put out the 2030 goal of 80% renewable energy. If you look at 2030 coming in from 2021 to 2030 in the next 8 to 9 years, there's a big ask when we are at 30%. So what needs to happen to make that really move forward? And I can see some extremely brilliant examples that have happened since COVID. One of which is, of course, how Australia has moved into the whole solar battery solutions in South Australia. There is a direct link between destruction of forest cover and water resources and rainfall. And we can see Sri Lanka is placed in what I would call a red zone, where water shortages will begin to impact our nation. And I picked up this very interesting article sometime back about the risk of having these kind of issues hit our nation. So I'm trying to give some context to why we are looking together in terms of these 5 key goals. The one I have not put down here, I'm sharing in the next slide. So I think one of the other areas that we are looking at is this development of physical resources. And there is a huge opportunity for Sri Lanka because we now have probably the world's purest graphite, and we have amongst the best rock phosphate, and we have amongst the best titanium in the world at a 73.8% purity. From time immemorial, we have been an exporter of raw material, pretty much in gunny bag form. And while the world is looking at these sectors as emerging sectors, especially when I look at graphite and graphene, one of the jobs that I had the opportunity of doing in Sri Lanka before I came back in 2017 was really lead the Sri Lanka Institute of Nanotechnology. So I'm quite aware of the amazing resources we have. I'm aware of the strategic industries that are emerging. I'm also aware of Sri Lanka's geographic position in terms of the One Belt, One Road project of China, where 138 nations are involved in this. And there has to be an opportunity to value add and strategically look at end products that come from these 3 resources. So that's pretty much the rationale on the 5 goals that I have talked about as potentially strategic prioritization and the whole issue of sustainable finance and attracting sustainable finance to them. One of the interesting projects that I had the opportunity of working with was...
Dr. Fernando, sorry, I'm sorry to jump in. We also want to leave some room for some time for question and answers. Is it possible to perhaps wrap up?
Yes, I'm on my last slide. So
great, thank you.
Okay, so basically, I want to end with those 5 strategic priorities, but of course mention that there are enabling priority goals that are also there. Today, I don't want to spend too much time on that. And besides simply saying that there are enabling priorities, and for me, the priorities I've mentioned here are enablers, whereas the strategic priorities are the ones that I believe needs to be focused on. Once again, these are early days for the committee, and this is pretty much work in progress. And I look forward to sharing my thoughts, which are my personal thoughts in the case of some of this, because the game plan going forward is at an early stage. So thank you very much. And with that, I want to hand back to Sanashia. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Fernando, for the presentation. I think we do have quite a few questions that are coming in. The chat has been buzzing a bit. But before we move on to questions, we have with us Ms. Rajni Lahandapura, the chairperson of the Marine Environment Protection Authority. Ms. Lahandapura, I'm wondering, would you like, I believe you have a commitment at 11 a.m., but before leaving, would you like to very quickly comment on the focus of risk management or capacity or needs that you think are needed to ensure risk management in the marine sector?
Hello, can you all
Yes,
hear
Ms.
me?
Yes, Ms. Lahandapura, I can hear you.
Can you, hello?
Yes, Ms. Lahandapura, I can hear you.
I'm clear, no, yeah. Yeah, well, thank you very much for the opportunity. Sorry that all of a sudden I'll have to, I got another commitment, so I'll have to leave. From MIPA's side, actually, end of the day, all those climate change impact ocean, and with ocean impacts only, we will face the rest of the climate change impact. So basically, MIPA, we have identified the challenges that we have. And because now, just to list some of the issues that we have a lot of issues compared to marine activities. Like, I mean, if you say there are marine transport activities carrying out, commerce and trade activities, and then tourism and recreation. And also we have, we actually, with ocean, we do this marine harvesting living resources like seafood, and then there are opportunities for us to go for biotechnology. We have opportunities for go for extract resources. Likewise, there are many activities that we do at the moment, and also activities that we are planning. So basically, when we think about the issues that would impact marine and coastal resources, and also the challenges that we face, and also how to convert these into actually financial tools, we found that actually at the moment MIPA is doing, MIPA is partnering with the IMO, International Maritime Organization.
Ms. Lahandapura?
Hello, can you give me 5 minutes? I'll come back to you.
Sure.
Yeah, there's a urgent call.
Okay, great. So we did have some Janani's dropped a question. We also have Eranga who's dropped a comment. We do have some comments on the chat. I'm wondering if those who had actually left those comments would like to perhaps unmute themselves and uh, start the conversation. We do have some time allocated for Q&A before we move on to the next section. If think Professor Hemanti, Mrs. Hathura Singh, I think Dr. Punyavardhan also made some comments on the chat. I'm wondering, would you be able to perhaps unmute yourself and we could take this discussion forward?
Yes, I'm Hemanti. Actually, Ravi is a colleague of mine. We are working on this Sustainable Council together. So, well, because I recently participated in a big symposium organized by MIPA, and that's more on this blue carbon economy, because now we are trying to go quite big on the blue carbon, the service provision, as well as carbon sequestrations from the sea. So I was just thinking whether we could also include the life underwater to this privatization of the SDGs.
Sorry, Dr. Fernando, you're muted.
Thanks, Professor Hemanti. As you know, we are these early days, and I fully subscribe to that idea, and that should be definitely part of the 5. We should actually increase the group from 5 to 6 and include that. So, totally agree with you, Professor Hemanti.
Thank you, Dr. Fernando. Dr. Punyavardhan, you can unmute yourself. Dr. Punyavardhana, you should see a prompt Okay, and Vasudha said that we should also perhaps look into that in SDG 13 on climate.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Dr. Punyavasan.
Okay. Dr. Punand, thank you very much for your informative and very comprehensive presentation. But I have a small query. At one time, you were mentioning about the rainfall in the plantation areas like upcountry and mid-country is decreasing, while low country is increasing. I think we may have to revisit these data or analysis, because what we're really experiencing in this country is the increase of variability of rain rather than increasing or decreasing rain. At the end of the day or at the end of the year, the accumulative annual or seasonal rainfall will be same, but the timing and the distribution is very erratic. That is the one which affects the plantation sector very much.
Yes, so I think what I'll do is share the information with SLYCAN, and they can share it with you also, Dr. Ranjit, because this is data that's coming to me from the three sectors, the upcountry, low country, mid country. And what we are really seeing is the increase of extreme weather incidents, and that goes to your point of variability. Yes, we are seeing that a lot, and this has directly affected the yields of some of the crops that we are making, and also in terms of some of the new fields we are beginning to get into, and new areas in terms of agriculture. We can see massive rainfall just wiping them out. So you're right, the variability and extreme weather incidents is the key factor, but I will share that information with you.
Sure, please. Okay? And you know, there is a saying in the climatology that it is not the average kills, that is the extreme that kills.
Absolutely. Extreme that kills, 1000%. In fact, that is really why I shared some of the extreme weather incidents of the world today. And of course, all of us know that Sri Lanka experienced its highest ever temperatures ever recorded in Sri Lanka's history in 140 years in 2019. So yes, extreme kills. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ram.
Thank you, Dr. Punyavasan. Ms. Lahandpura, are you able to come in again?
Sanasha, Mrs. Lahandapur just called. She has been called in for a meeting, but she's going to join towards the end of the session, and as in end of today's discussion, and she'll be contributing.
Okay, great. Thanks, Vasudha.
Sanasha, can I comment? Anura Satrosina?
Yes, Mrs. Satrosina, please do.
Yes. I also joined with Dr. Punyavasan, Dr. Ravi, just to congratulate for you the excellent presentation. I'm just wondering for one thing, because this forest cover figures you have mentioned is the present forest cover in Sri Lanka is something like 16%. But so even with the forest department, the recent cover figures which was published in 2000, according to the 2015 forest cover map, it says it's something like 27.2%, because earlier it was 27.9% and it has gone down to 27.2%. So I don't know how you got this 16% figure. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Anura, for that very important question, and I appreciate that. So I think the real question is, how do we calculate forest cover? And I think the important point I want to make is that in terms of calculating forest cover, we are looking at basically virgin forests. We are not looking at plantation cover. And the moment we begin to add plantation cover, then our figure goes up to the figure that you mentioned, Anura. But this is a report that I've seen from the Environmental Foundation of Sri Lanka, and I've also seen this figure come up time and again. And that is where the figure comes in terms of the 16%. So I think that there will always be sort of debate and discussion whether 16% is right or 29% is right. But I think probably the explanation is coming from linking plantation cover and adding it onto forest cover. That probably is my understanding of this factor, Anurag.
Just to respond to that, I don't think the Forest Department has ever considered the plantation forest cover to their natural forest cover. But of course, let me recheck with them.
Yeah, please,
Because,
please.
yeah.
And I think also, Anura, do look at the EFL report that was published in 2020 and 2018, which also has their rationale for that. So let's look at both those reports. Okay, Anura?
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Anuradha Singh,
Yes.
how about the canteen forest garden? Does it cover as a forest?
No, it is not included in the forest cover. At the moment.
Actually, it's a forest, isn't it? For me.
Yeah, but of course, as per the FAO classification, it is not considered under the forest cover. Now, I mean, if you consider the tree cover, definitely yes, it has to be. Even the, I mean, even the home guards even other home guards in the wet zone needs to be considered. So
Absolutely.
in that case, the tree cover goes up to like 60 to 60% of the total land area in Sri Lanka.
Yeah, so Anura, I can also share with you in terms of tree cover, you're absolutely right. Our tree cover figures are much higher than the forest cover figures. One of the websites I would like to direct you and everyone to is the World Resource Institute has a website called the Forest Watch. And Forest Watch, if you go to Forest Watch, you can see for every country what is the tree cover also. And my guess is that the Forest Watch figure for Sri Lanka is closer to the 40%, 45% region. But absolutely, our tree cover is quite good. So we have something good to look at in terms of tree cover. Yeah?
That's correct.
Thank you very much to Mrs. Hadrasingh and Dr. Punyavalkana. Dr. Sugatapala has made a comment on the chat saying all SDGs are integrated and prioritization based on SDGs is questionable. Dr. Sugatapala, I'm wondering, are you in a position to unmute yourself and perhaps speak a bit more on this?
Right. Now, I just thought when you prioritize it, that one of the fundamental principles of SDGs we had to follow. There are around 5 such fundamentals. One of the fundamentals is the interconnectedness and indivisibility. So when you look at that principle, how could we prioritize? That's one of the question.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tusita Sugatapal. Thank you very much for that question. So let me give some background to this. When we say prioritization, we are talking of prioritization of investment funds. We are not saying that we are going to de-link all the others, but we are saying if we have a limited funding available, it's better to put it behind the priorities. Now, the major reason for sharing this idea of prioritization is something I have now worked with in 4 countries. I have done this for the Malaysian government. I've also done it for the Vietnamese government. And I've also done somewhat the work in China. So the reason we have begun to use the word focused prioritization is when we looked at how people were approaching the UN SDGs and how people were reporting on the UN SDGs from the time it was launched in 2015 at the Paris Agreement, we found that this increasingly in most of the countries I just mentioned, this turned to become a tick in the box exercise. Everyone would look at all 17 SDGs, all 200 odd action points, and at the end of the day, the bottom line is look at what the world has achieved in terms of SDGs when we look at the situation as at today. So what is the situation as at today? As at today, when we review the achievement of SDGs in terms of nationally determined commitments, we are 67% of the targets that the nations committed to. And one of the reasons that has been attributed to that, if you read the UNEP emissions gap report, is defocusing and not lacking in prioritization. So that is one of the reasons, Mr. Dr. Sugatapala, we are trying to get much more focused activity behind the ones that actually contribute directly to the climate emergency. So even when we look at what is needed to be achieved in the future, we are now looking at an unbelievably humongous task of first catching up the 60% that we are below between 2015 and 2020, 5 years, and in the next 8 to 9 years, we have to now get 100% of what we committed. So, I take your point. I take that these are all interconnected SDGs, but what is becoming increasingly a solution is what we have done in Malaysia, Vietnam, and we are probably trying to look at in Sri Lanka to a small extent, and what has happened in China. I mean, if you look at China, for example, if you look at their 17 goals and look at where they are putting their money, you'll begin to see there are 3 or 4 that they are totally focused on, one of which is renewable energy. Thanks once again very much for your question, Mr. Sugar.
Yeah, I quickly respond to that because I also aware of this one. Usually what they prioritize is not the SDGs, but they prioritize activities. When you prioritize the activities, that basically localize one, and then you will find that these are gathered under maybe certain SDGs. So the prioritization occurs not at SDG level, but activity level. That's one question. Yeah. So the other one.
You're right. So that's actually, that's why I talked about the renewable energy side.
Right.
That's why I talked about innovation side.
Right.
Yes. So you're right. There is a clustering from the sector. You're absolutely.
Right. So we have to start from there. I think second one is usually this prioritization happen with very strong stakeholder participation. That's where the data is. That's where the knowledge is. So I am not very sure how it's happening now, but I think this prioritization, of course, what we see finally as the national level, but when you look at the ground level, it's prioritized by stakeholder consultation, very strong. So there you get the correct data. And for example, now already there are some data issues we discussed. And at the same line, because I am also working the energy sector, the target you set has been changed now. The 80% renewable energy target is not there anymore.
It's 70 now.
Yeah, it's 70, but even that 70, now they have changed to not renewables, it's clean energy where even natural gas is considered as clean. So therefore, the contribution for renewable energy now set by the government is 50%. 20% come from natural gas. And of course, this energy, they refers to electricity, not really energy. So therefore, still there's a confusion whether what is energy or electricity.
Yeah, both.
So therefore, so this 30% you talk about this or 70% fossil also is not for energy, it's for electricity.
Correct. Thanks for that clarification. And to be honest, I wasn't aware that the figure had dropped to 50%. I knew it had gone down to 70%.
Yeah, that's electricity again. Sorry.
Yeah, electricity. So I think we are looking at the cause of global warming, and this is an issue that needs to be focused on. Otherwise, we are not going to be holding the 1.5 degree centigrade story if nations start changing their NDCs and increasing even the fossil fuels like natural gas, which is clearly a fossil fuel. And I think one of the things I will do, Senasha, is share with you a very recent breakdown of per terawatt of energy from the various resources, starting with coal, moving down right the way to natural gas, and then looking at the renewables, and what an amazing impact it is having in terms of gigatons and how many deaths it's involving. So there is definitely a need to relook at some of these things. But what I'm sharing with all of you is what I have been able to put in place in 4 countries that have now begun to really move those countries forward internationally in terms of achieving the sectorial impacts that they want to minimize the rise in temperatures. Yeah. Back to you, Sanasha.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Dr. Sridhar, and everyone else who's contributing to this very lively discussion. It's making my life easier as a moderator. So we have 2 hands that have been raised, Vasita and Janani. Vasita, I would like you to maybe go first, and Janani as soon as Vasita is done. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sanasha. I just had a quick addition and also the question. So basically, when you're talking about SDGs, climate action would be something that goes across all these sectors, and biodiversity would be something important as well, since you're looking at the resources, the natural resources. And getting it into the finance angle, you mentioned the industry perspective. I feel like the whole conversation we're having today is going across this as well, how risk management could play a role, so how climate risk would impact the industry sector and how this could be managed. So what I want to address or question you on is, has this been considered and is there a way that this could be integrated? Because I think this is a cross-cutting one and especially a very important one when we're focusing on industry sector.
Yeah, so let me share something with you, Ashita. I had the good fortune of working with Jeffrey Sachs, who actually was involved when the 8 Millennium Development Goals were set up. And one of the things he said to me was that he did his best to make sure that the 8 goals remained, and they were looking at, when it came to the UN SDG Paris Agreement, not to increase it dramatically. And because he said every one of these goals are interconnected, as Mr. Sugatapal very rightly pointed out. So the background to this is, I think there has been a explosion of UN SDGs. And my real question is whether each of them are significantly independent. I agree that climate action is an important area and probably should be considered in the short list of priorities. And we will definitely look at it. And I appreciate your comment. But I'm going back to when Jeffrey Sachs was involved in this and talked about we are simply, if you achieve 2 out of 8 Millennium Development Goals, the next time around you don't have 17 goals and try to end up, as at today, having not achieved none at the 2020 point. But I want to respond to your other point, which is sustainable finance. And this is an area I'm directly involved with with the European Union. I work very closely with Luxembourg, and I also work with the European Investment Bank in Luxembourg. And just to share with all of you, the European Investment Bank is today the biggest multilateral lending agency, bigger than World Bank and IMF combined. It has a disbursement of 88 billion euros per annum. Now, in terms of impacting, using that money for sustainability, one of the decisions they announced this year was they are zeroing any investment in fossil fuel and including natural gas. So that is a very bold step forward. So yes, because if we are going to access the Green Climate Fund, if we are going to access ADB funding, if we are going to access European Investment Bank funding, we have to be very focused on our proposals. What we cannot do is to say, we've got 17 goals, we'll put 1/17th into each of these goals. No. I think the time has come for the world to wake up to the reality that this tick in the box exercise that the world has been engaged in from 2015, from 1987, is not going to help us really manage the crisis that we are in. It was by default that COVID came and reduced our emissions by 7 or 8%. But when I look at the most recent figures as at April, there is a rebound like you have never seen before. So all the gains we made with COVID, we are losing very fast. So I think the important point I want to make is the sustainable finance sector. In fact, you must be knowing, Varshita, that the European Investment Bank was the first bank in the world to launch green bonds in 2007. And I worked very closely with the guy who planned that, achieved that. Today, green bonds have taken off dramatically. But if you look at the green bonds, I mean, just to once again reiterate the point of focus, the green bonds were only put behind 3 sectors: renewable energy, energy efficiency, and one other area. So even there, the unleashing of sustainable finance is not coming to impact every goal that is around. It is coming directly to impact the focus priorities, and that is the point I've been trying to make, Varshita. Yeah?
Thank you very much, Dr. Fernando. Janani, I know your hand's been up, so if you could maybe quickly come in within the next 2 to 3 minutes and Dr. Fernando could respond. Thank you.
Hi, Sanashia. Thanks so much. I'll keep it really short. Hi, Dr. Fernando. Good to see you as always.
Hi,
My
Janani.
question is a little away from where the discussion has been going, but I'd like to hear some thoughts from you on what actions or strategies that companies should look at, especially trying to promote Sri Lanka as a hub for sustainable manufacturing, because I think it's very important with how things are going right now that we promote Sri Lanka's manufacturing, because that's definitely an area where we can sort of promote ourselves to the world. So some thoughts from you on that.
Thanks, Janani, for that question. As all of you know, Janani is working for the United Nations Global Compact in Sri Lanka, and I sit on that board as well. And one of the areas that when the evaluation of the Millennium Development Goals and even the evaluation of the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals was done in the UNEP emissions gap report, what we found was that one of the reasons for the failure in the MDGs and the failure as at today is the lack of engagement of the business sector and the private business sector globally. And this is an area that needs to be completely rejigged, because if one looks at the top 100 economies of the world today, 80% of those positions are now held by businesses and not countries. It's only the top 10. There are a few countries there. After that, businesses have become more directly or indirectly impacting the global economies and how global economies are run in terms of sustainability. So what should be done, I think, are two things. I think in Sri Lanka, the business sector has to move from this concept that CSR equals sustainability to triple bottom line equals sustainability, and stakeholder management is equal to sustainability. There is yet, I think, a gap of knowledge that needs to be filled, because there are lots of people who yet think that we are doing sustainability actions, but most often they are not. I teach this subject at PIM now, and come across between 200 to 300 MBA students. And when I begin to listen to how their companies are approaching the subject, and I can tell you the best and the brightest companies are represented in that 301 students, I can see there's a total knowledge gap in terms of this whole area. So we need to understand that. So I think that's my response. Businesses need to engage. Businesses need to understand the difference between CSR and sustainability. And businesses who want support should be joining the UN Global Compact. Okay, back to Sanasha. Thank you for this time. And thanks for all the wonderful questions and advice. And I really appreciate the excellent input that I got from Anura, from Professor Hemanti, from Tusita, Washita, and really appreciate all that input. We are just a small group of people trying to do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fernando, and thank you to everyone who came in with questions and comments. I'm sure we could take this discussion forward from here as well. So for our next session, we actually we kind of ate into the time a bit, but I didn't want to also disrupt the conversation that we were having. So we have an open discussion where we'll be going through some of the existing risk transfer mechanisms in Sri Lanka and resilience-related projects and programs that we've identified in our previous workshop. And thank you, Sandrine, for that comment. So prior to Sandrine's comment on the chat, I've dropped 2 links. If you're able to, and if you're on a computer or a laptop, please do open these 2 links. So we'll probably go through them. You can see a few of you are already there. So I'll just quickly share my screen. Right. So this is actually, I hope you could see the screen on existing risk transfer mechanisms in Sri Lanka. And these have actually been identified, and the input has been gathered from some of the previous workshops that we've been having over the past year, as well as over the past year. So perhaps if we could maybe quickly go through this, and if anyone has anything to add, I believe you all are able to comment or edit on this document. So if anyone has anything to add, we'll maybe go through each and every one very quickly. You could say so, and I guess someone from our team would make note of this, perhaps on the document itself or on a separate document. But if not, um, right. Okay, right. So one of the first types of risk transfer mechanisms, I'm just going to go through them very quickly because we have one more document to get through, is from the Agriculture and Agri Insurance Board. We also have with us Ms. Mantilaka from the AAIB with us today. Thank you for joining, ma'am. So we have the National Crop Insurance, we also have the Government Compensation Scheme, as well as the index-based insurance from the Ministry of Fisheries. Just also perhaps to just one thing to maybe keep in mind when we also discuss agriculture, we are bringing into conversation fisheries and livestock, and we are looking at also risk management and finance options in other sectors. I mean, we want to also open this up to the coastal and marine sector, forestry and biodiversity, as well as tourism. Also perhaps keeping in mind certain, this is for this particular document as well as the next one as well, certain cross-cutting sectors that would include gender, youth, as well as just transition. So yeah, so we have the Ministry of Fisheries. So under that, we have the risk transfer mechanism of the compensation process and the pension scheme. And yeah, okay, fine. Sorry, I didn't see that. I hope that is, sorry, when you share your screen, you don't see the chat. I hope this seems okay. Right. Then we have the NITF. I'm not sure if Mr. Gunasekara from the NITF is with us today, but we have the National Natural Disaster Insurance Scheme, as well as the Insurance Called Fishing Board. We have ABC Insurance, which is another insurance for fishing boats. We have the National Disaster Relief Services Center that has a damage covering mechanism. And just going to scroll down. And if anyone wants to also access this on your device, there is a link on the chat, not the registration form, but the link after that. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Damita, for typing that in. And thank you, Dr. Giriraj, for your contribution, as always. Does anyone want to maybe quickly come in with anything else that they want to add to this? I'll maybe also reference the chat. If anyone has anything to maybe add to this, you could either drop it on the chat, or you are able to directly unmute yourself and make your intervention. Okay, if that's not the case, we can move on to second document. And I hope you could see my screen. So the screen is on potential programs to be utilized in implementing response mechanisms. So these have also been identified with some of the previous workshops that we had. And yeah, so some of the programs that came up during our previous discussions include so from the initiatives such as the Savia from the Dialogue with Privacy Service, the Govimituru Sairu Coastal Early Warning System, World Bank projects that include SCAM, such as SCAM, technical assistance to the modernization of agriculture program, the Mahavali Water Security Investment Management Program, smallholder. Dr. Punewardana?
Yes.
Yes.
Shansha, have you entered that our agriculture department toll-free advisory service called 1920? So it is open from 8:30 to 4 p.m. every day, including Saturday. Farmers can have a free advisory from the agriculture department.
Okay, okay. I'm sure.
6 days per week.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Punyavardhana.
And also, you have not included the agromet advisory that we are issuing every month in consultation with the Department of Meteorology.
Thank you, Dr. Punyavardhana. I'm sure. Anything else that you would like to add?
I think those are the 2 points I wanted to highlight.
Thank you very much. I'm sure someone from the team will be making note of this as well. Does anyone else have anything? Oh, sorry, there's more. I can see that. And we also. Sorry, Ashan, can you mute Dr. Punyavardhana, please? So we also have the Climate Resilient Integrated Water Management Project. Just do that. Okay. As well as, yeah, I hope everyone's, okay, thank you, Damita, for adding this. If anyone else has anything to add to either of these documents, you are free to do so on the document itself, or please drop it on the chat so we could maybe add it to this sheet. If we don't have any further additions from here, we could perhaps move on to the next agenda item, where we have with us Mr. Dennis Gomba, Director, Research and Knowledge Management at SLYCAN Trust, and he'll be launching the working paper on addressing climate and disaster risk through inclusive and participatory mechanisms. Dennis?
Yes, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me clearly.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I don't want to take up much time. Let me quickly share my screen. All right. So today, as part of this event, we are also launching our new working paper on addressing climate and disaster risks through inclusive and participatory mechanisms. And I will just give a bit of background on this and tell how we developed this, because I think many of the people who are here today have been part of this. And then I think the product can speak for itself. It's available now on our Knowledge Hub. I think someone will drop the link into the chat also. So basically, we have developed it in 4 stages. And I think the most important to focus on would be the workshop series that we did, the virtual workshop series that happened in January. And I think many of the people here have been part of this. So we had a preparation phase with desk research and scoping. Then we had the workshop series, which consisted of presentations, Q&A sessions, and breakout group discussions, and also open plenary. And then we consolidated the desk research, the input from the discussions, and some additional consultation of experts, and sent out a draft version to all the speakers and contributing experts, incorporated the feedback, sent an amended version to a wider expert audience, and incorporated more feedback from that audience. So the workshop series took place in January on 4 consecutive days, 18th to 21st. We had a total of 20 different speakers. Also, some people spoke in several sessions. So in total, as you can see on the posters, there have been more speakers than 20. And we had 658 participants on Zoom, plus an additional 4,400 people watching on Facebook Live. So I think a very good attendance, and we had very lively discussions, a lot of feedback. These are some of the Miro boards that we had with feedback from different people on different aspects. So in total, we had 7 breakout group discussions with Miro boards, plus several open discussions and Q&As. And we got a lot of different information on different aspects of like disaster risk management, climate risk management, risk finance, risk transfer instruments, and how they can be made more inclusive and participatory. And based on this, we developed our working paper. This is like some of the first pages. And that focuses on different areas. First, it gives a short overview of climate impacts and hazards and how climate risk is composed. Then it goes further into comprehensive risk management, the different aspects of that, risk prevention, risk reduction, risk transfer, risk retention, and then also preparedness. And focuses on the role of different stakeholders, from government to private sector to local communities, academia, research institutions, community-based organizations, civil society, NGOs, all these different actors that can be part and have to be part of comprehensive risk management. We have a big section on cross-cutting issues as well, which focuses on how vulnerable communities specifically can be integrated and included, how gender responsiveness and gender implications come into risk management, how it connects to just transition. So basically the transition toward what we also saw in the previous presentation and the questions, transition toward a more climate-friendly, climate-resilient, carbon-neutral society, and also just recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic and the impacts of that. And then the core section of this is how to develop inclusive and participatory risk transfer instruments and mechanisms, starting with the policy landscape, the enabling environment, data information needs, the scope of insurance mechanisms, risk transfer mechanisms, what can they cover and what can't they cover, because they can only be part of a comprehensive risk management strategy. And then how the private sector and public-private partnerships can be integrated into this, how communities and community knowledge can be integrated into this, and again, how the different stakeholders come into this. So basically, this is the scope of the working paper and how we developed it. It's available on our Adaptation and Resilience Knowledge Hub right now. I guess the link has been already dropped into the chat. And yeah, I hope all of you have a look at it. I think it should be a useful document to guide our further discussions on this, and also to build on it with, for the country-specific knowledge outputs that we are developing. All right, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me directly or ask them now. I think now we have a presentation from the InsuResilience Global Partnership Secretariat. And after that, we'll have further open sessions of discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dennis, for that presentation. We have with us now, we have with us, sorry, now Mr. Kai Tushin. He's an advisor in the Intra-Resilience Secretariat, and he has a background in development and behavioral economics and manages monitoring and impact evaluation efforts under the Intra-Resilience Global Partnership. His work is furthermore addressing the topics of innovation and compound risks. Mr. Kai, yes. You're muted.
Yes, thank you, and a warm welcome everyone, and thanks for inviting me over. I'm quickly starting my screen sharing so that you can see my short presentation. I hope you can see it now.
Not just yet.
Yes.
We can see it now. Thank you.
Great. Perfect. So yeah, again, thanks for inviting me. And I will quickly introduce the Intra-Resilience Global Partnership for those who are not yet familiar with it. And then I will showcase a part of our work and the potential that it bears for public-private partnerships in the sector of climate and disaster risk finance and insurance, and also what potential lies in the application of blended finance. So the Intra-Resilience Global Partnership is a multi-stakeholder partnership that was founded by the Group of 20, the G20, and the group of the vulnerable countries, the V20. And it convenes almost 100 stakeholders from academia, from countries, from implementing partners, from the private sector, and from civil society. The overall goal of the Intra-Resilience Global Partnership is to, in a collective effort, strengthening financial resilience of poor and vulnerable people against the effects of climate change. Given that resilience is a multidimensional concept, there are multiple targets of the partnership under which we measure progress towards this common vision in our strategic document Vision 2025. So by 2025, we want to ensure that there are 500 million vulnerable people protected through climate and disaster risk finance and insurance solutions, for example. And we also want to make sure that there are 80 vulnerable countries which have a comprehensive disaster risk finance strategy in place. And moreover, we also want to ensure that, for example, 15% of the annual climate and disaster losses of vulnerable people are covered by insurance and finance solutions under the partnership. How do we do that in the partnership? First of all, we set this common ambition, and we set a common agenda for everybody who's joining the partnership. These goals become kind of the mini SDGs of this realm of climate finance. And in the partnership, we share learning and best practices, and we coordinate among implementers. So we have a convening platform especially for implementing agencies, which is the Program Alliance, where a lot of learning is happening, a lot of exchange. And what we also try to do, especially by collaboration with the civil society and the Vulnerable 20, is we try to link actual needs with solutions. So we also see ourselves as a matchmaker, as an honest broker in this field. There are 4 work streams under the Intra-Resilience Global Partnership. The first one is strategic guidance and convergence, where we really try to, on a political level, reach a common understanding and a common strategy towards climate resilience. The second stream is action and implementation. This is mainly the work stream where the Program Alliance is feeding into, with the work on implementation. The third work stream, capacity building and knowledge management. This is actually what I'm doing here, sharing some knowledge from what we're doing. But there are also working groups in the Intra-Resilience Global Partnerships on gender, on impact, and on integrated approaches, where we invite all our members to share their knowledge. So these working groups are really the engine of the partnership, I would say. And then, of course, the entire partnership in the fourth work stream works as a collaborative network. Under normal conditions, we would try to convene the partnership at least once a year at our annual partnership forum, which typically happens at the margins of the COP. Last year was the first time for us to host it online, which was also pretty successful, I would say, and a pretty interesting experience for all of us. And these occasions we use to share even more knowledge among the members and to match people who follow the same ideas in the same country context, for example, and could collaborate. I took this nice figure from a very recent paper by the Center of Disaster Protection, because I think it nicely depicts the different disaster risk finance tools that are out there in a people-centered manner. And as you can see, there are 3 main systems, I would say, of how an individual could get hands on disaster risk finance. So on your left, you see the typical tools of a household to manage disasters in a financial way, be it through savings, through insurance, or taking a credit, and at the bottom left, informal insurance networks. And then there's also the government support side, which is separated in 2 main streams. We call them money in and money out, mainly because the money inside is how the governments or humanitarian actors or NGOs in countries receive their funds, which could also happen through insurance, but also through catastrophe contingent credits, through a disaster allocation fund, through risk pools, and then these actors distribute the money, hopefully into the households, be it through cash transfers directly or indirectly through improving public assets and restoring public assets, or even through early actions. So this is mainly the overview of the tools that are available under the Intra-Resilience Global Partnership, and that which we are trying to promote globally. But of course, these disaster risk finance systems, they do face challenges, and many of these challenges are similar across countries. So it's a big challenge to develop actual demand-based solutions. I think we can all agree on that. In many cases, solutions come into place, and it's difficult to match them to the demands of the people, which then in return leads to low adoption rates and a misfunctioning of the solution. Then there's also sometimes a mismatch between private sector expectations and policy priorities. For example, it's difficult to build a sustainable functioning or even competitive functioning insurance market in a country where policy priorities keep changing. This also leads to the third point of regulatory barriers that insurers often face in country contexts. And a very common challenge that I think everybody faces are data availability issues when modeling risks, but also when working with customers. This remains a challenge for many insurers coming into a country, but also for risk finance as a whole. How can public-private partnerships or blended finance funds overcome these issues? I think they are a great tool for matching the local implementation experience that is out there with the required capital or support, be it private capital or donor money. I think a PPP is a great construct to make a good match here. And it also can embed the insurance and finance solutions into a broader resilience agenda. I think in the working paper that Dennis just presented, we have seen that insurance is only one part of a broader resilience concept, and it needs to be embedded, it needs to be integrated, otherwise it doesn't work. It only works when it's embedded well, and I think a public-private partnership can do the crucial support here. And I think the last important point is that PPPs and also blended finance funds, I will come to that later, how it actually works, leverage and strengthen local capacities. So I think there's so much innovation going on in the countries, and with targeted investments, this can really be supported in a nice manner, and it can be leveraged into impact. I brought two examples to underline that, how these channels work. The first one is the Tripartite Agreement. You see here in this picture, Mr. Achim Steiner from UNDP, Mrs. Maria Flaxbart from the German Ministry of Cooperation and Development, and Mr. Denis Duverne, who's leading the Insurance Development Forum, which is the collaboration of primary and reinsurers for development. And in 2019, they signed an agreement to shape a large public-private partnership between these actors to support inclusive insurance solutions in 20 countries, with a strong focus in modeling climate and disaster risks, applying these risk models, analyzing risk transfer solutions, and integrating risk transfer in the development process. And to set up the partnership, the German government has committed 30 million euros in support of the implementation of the agreement, and the Insurance Development Forum from their side agreed that the private sector is going to make available $5 billion in reinsurance capacity as their share of the agreement. While the United Nations Development Program acts as the implementing expertise in this case, and they have the country level contacts, they have their offices in the countries. Excuse me, they do the scoping work on the ground. So this is a very good example, I would say, where three actors come together with a lot of expertise and leverage donor funds and private sector capital for good impact. And UNDP has come up with, in reaction to that, with the founding of the UNDP Insurance and Risk Finance Facility, which now works under the 5 work streams that you see here: integrating insurance into development, inclusive insurance, sovereign risk financing, natural capital, insurance and investments. And even within the insurance realm, you can see that there are many integrative parts that are now leveraged with this partnership. And with the cross-cutting themes that you see at the bottom of the slide, they try to overcome the challenges that DRF instruments currently face in many countries. So they do provide governance and institutional support, helping with regulatory barriers, for example, and also shaping an enabling environment in the countries for inclusive insurance solutions. They try to convene local capacities and local leaders to build a fundament of support for that solution. They work inclusive and empowering in the country to make the insurance solution really equally available to all people. They apply technology and innovation to overcome data gaps, and they also provide advocacy research and evidence to showcase what's working on the ground and also to learn from what's not working on the ground. They came up with a list of 20 countries where solutions are going to be implemented. You can see on this map that there's really quite a global spread of solutions. And some of the implementations are in a rather early stage, highlighted under advanced, while some of the solutions are already under development. And in Peru, the first implementation has started with an insurance project for schools. In Sri Lanka, the scoping of UNDP highlighted that there's large potential for MSME insurance, especially for business interruption. So I think we can be excited to see what's coming up there from the collaboration between these 3 actors. And for each of the projects under this agreement, they are going to link their work to an insurance company, which is then going to provide the reinsurance capacity to support the local solution with reinsurance capital at an appropriate price. The second solution that I wanted to share with you is a big instrument under the Intra-Resilience Global Partnership. It's the InsuResilience Investment Fund. It was founded by BMZ and the German development bank KfW, and it's managed by Blue Orchard, a fund manager, and technical advisory is provided by Celsius Pro, a Swiss insurance consultancy. So the InsuResilience Investment Fund is a blended finance fund. So it combines private and public capital, and it has 2 sub-funds, a debt and an equity fund. They are active for 6 years now, and in that time they invested $133 million in 21 investee companies all over the world. If you want to have a detailed look at where they are working, you can have a look at the Intra-Resilience annual report, where we have a nice interactive world map, which you can filter for the Intra-Resilience investment fund to see where they're active. And they have also last year launched their Intra-Resilience investment fund outreach report. I think I will share the slides after the presentation, so that you can click on that link. And in that outreach report, they have a bunch of nice case studies where they showcase their work. I will also show one of them. And in these 6 years, they have reached in 2020 a number of 25 million beneficiaries, which are household members of people who have taken insurance policies under solutions of the IIF. And all of these beneficiaries are considered to fall under the Intra-Resilience target group, which means that they are poor or vulnerable to climate change, which means that they have an income which might be at risk under the threat of the materialization of a climate hazard. I picked one of the investees to present it to you and to showcase what the Intra-Resilience Investment Fund can do. In Pakistan, they're supporting the Kash Foundation, which is a microfinance company. It's not a bank, more a typical MFI. And the IIF invested $7.5 million US dollars into this foundation. And they are providing livestock insurance or insurance for loans for livestock for female farmers. And currently they reach 9,500 women farmers. And the case study that they conducted has shown that the beneficiaries of these insurance solutions typically use payouts to repay their loans, which allows them to reinvest the money, because once their loan is repaid, they can take out a new one and start rebuilding their livestock. And 2/3 of the study respondents have experienced a climate shock in the past 24 months before the study. And I think this example nicely shows how a big construct, the Intra-Resilience Investment Fund, with private and public capital, can trickle down into actual impact on the ground for people facing climate shocks, and can use the funds from the insurance solutions in their daily lives. I'm now looking forward to receiving your questions, and I have also one last slide where I point out at potential contact points with us. We kindly invite you to join the Risk Talk platform, which is a nice platform to exchange on questions. There's a matching algorithm that is going to match your questions with the best expert available. And there's also our newsletter, and we're also on Twitter and LinkedIn. And we invite you to follow us for further updates and case studies and everything that we can share there.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jushin, for that presentation. Before we move on to questions, we just have about 15 minutes for question and answers. Just a quick housekeeping reminder to request everyone to kindly fill out the registration form if you already haven't. This would actually help us to take this conversation forward with this group of people, as well as a few others who could join in the discussion. So we do have 2 questions on the chat. Dr. Giriraj, I'm wondering, are you in a position to maybe unmute yourself and come in with the question?
Yeah, I can do that.
Great.
Am I audible?
Yes, Dr. Giriraj.
Thank you for inviting, and thanks for the excellent presentation from Kai. My question is that could you just describe one, though you presented the Pakistan as an example, how this InsuResilience partnership have evolved over the years of promoting risk transfer in reducing the economic exposure at both meso and macro scale, and integrated in the disaster risk management by the countries. And the second question is that while these initiatives are implemented by the countries, I saw a dozen of countries are being rolled out. But what's the sustainability and how does the policies takes into the place once the projects get rolled out beyond the project period?
Thank you very much for these questions. So tackling the first one, how did the Intra-Resilience Global Partnership reach scale over years on the meso and on the macro level? I think what becomes really apparent looking at the work under Intra-Resilience is that building sustainable insurance and finance solutions, it takes time. It really takes time. And we also see that, for example, under the Corona crisis, not only private households, but also public households face a severe liquidity crunch. And of course, when liquidity is low, buying insurance is not the first priority of people and countries. And we are pretty grateful for some of the donor countries stepping in with premium support here. We're also preparing a paper currently on smart premium and capital support, on how to improve the functioning of premium support in this case. But reaching scale and staying at scale sustainably is still a challenge, of course. But what we can see from the data is that the numbers of solutions and also the numbers of people under these solutions that are living with coverage are increasing. Not with the pace we expected maybe in the very beginning, but slowly but sustainably, we hope. And your second question is also a really important but difficult one. What happens when projects are terminated? We always try from the Secretariat perspective to follow up with, for example, the entities that were supported under a PPP, for example, say an insurance facility in Zambia that was recently released from a public-private partnership. And we, of course, closely monitor their success and try to track and see what is going on. But in the current state, what I can say is that we do not have so many solutions yet where the program support has expired. But it's, of course, a point that we have on our agenda, because there are more and more solutions coming up where investments are expiring and where PPPs are expiring. And I think with close monitoring and with keeping a good contact, at least from the Secretariat side, we really try to hold hands there. There's a good chance to transfer this in a sustainable way, in a sustainable entity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tushan. I'm wondering if anyone else, Dr. Giriraj, I hope that answered your question. I'm wondering if anyone else has any other questions, and if Ms. Mantilika from the Agriculture and Agrarian Insurance Board would like to maybe come in and make a quick intervention. Perhaps. Yes, Adisha, please go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to ask whether InsuResilience is open to also look at a country level blended finance facility, because we in the banking sector, we looked at establishing such a finance facility here. We reached out to different partners, OECD, EU. So we'll be happy to hear whether InsuResilience is okay. I mean, is also willing to come and look at a country level blended finance facility.
Yeah, I do think there are ways or instruments under the partnership to support country level finance or insurance facilities, especially in the setup process. So aside from the Intra-Resilience Investment Fund, there's also the Intra-Resilience Solutions Fund, which is which has a bit of a stronger focus on scoping and on setting up early stage solutions instead of investing in a running business, which the Intra-Resilience Investment Fund is mainly doing. And I think the Intra-Resilience Solutions Fund has multiple windows for submitting proposals for support. And at the same time, the GRIF, the Global Risk Financing Facility of the World Bank, which is also supported under the Intra-Resilience Solutions Fund, under the Intra-Resilience Global Partnership, can offer support for country-level solutions. So I think there are these two. And then we are also closely working with the ADB, and they have the Asia Pacific Climate Insurance Facility, which would also be open to support local solutions. But in case you need like bilateral guidance on that, we are always there. The Intra-Resilience Secretariat is there for a bilateral consultation on a specific collaboration request, and we always try and facilitate the submission of proposals to the specific solutions. So in case you have a concrete proposal, you can definitely approach us for a bilateral consultation.
Thanks so much. So I'll get you further details from SLYCAN and reach out to you.
Sure.
Thanks very much, Adisha. We have one more question from Dennis on the chat. I'll just read it out. Under the Tripartite Agreement, you mentioned inclusion and empowerment as one of the cross-cutting areas. Could you expand a bit on this? Is there a mechanism to include local community-level actors into this process?
So I cannot say what the specific approach in the 20 country projects is to ensure inclusiveness and empowerment. But what I can say is that we from the Intra-Resilience Secretariat, we ensure with our monitoring system that all the solutions that are implemented under Intra-Resilience follow the gender responsive CDRFI criteria, for example, that we set up. And that the solutions are also provided in compliance with the pro-poor principles that were developed in the partnership. And I think with these two core documents, which are also cross-cutting to all work streams of the Intra-Resilience Global Partnership, we provide good guidance. But yes, I do see the target of the question, that of course we cannot ensure that in all the local projects this is perfectly implemented from the beginning. But we do have an eye on that, and we do try to make sure that it is included.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I think it's just it's always good to have to keep all these things in mind. And
yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sandrine, your hand is raised. You could unmute yourself. Sandrine.
Can you hear me? Yeah, thanks.
Yes.
Hi, thanks. Okay. We as a bank, I mean, just to raise a question, what kind of business do we have, like, for us to channel all these, since we are a formal institution, so which way that you would expect us to formalize this, kind of readiness or to channel all your propositions? What are the basic or salient product propositions of features that should they engage with? Kind of formalities, if you can please explain, or rather you expect that to be there, homework well done. So for us to get connected easily. Or rather, if you can also share in the same way to answer the question, if you have dealt with one of the banks, how you do engage there, and then also what's your experience, your success story, if you can just explain so that we can also identify those criteria or other salient features, what should have been there prior to.
Sorry, I had a bit of an issue understanding your questions for audio reasons. Is the question about the formal requirements to interact with one of the funds as a bank?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. If you can share us a success story, a project that you have dealt with one of the banks, that could give us a better picture.
So I can definitely recommend having a look into the outreach report of the Intra-Resilience Investment Fund here, which is referenced in the slides, which I'm going to share after the presentation. And there you will find case studies with best practice examples from the field. And for the formal requirements for example, submitting a proposal to the IIF for establishing an investment, I think it is best to interact with the IIF directly, because we as a Secretariat, we're not managing the fund ourselves, of course. And with the formal requirements, the IIF is and Blue Orchard, the fund manager, are actually the best focal points.
Sounds perfect. Thanks, Kate. Yeah, well received.
Thank you very much. If we have no further questions, I don't see any hands raised. If anyone maybe wants to come in very quickly, or if not, I think we could. Right. Okay. I guess we could close. So I would like to maybe take this moment to thank Mr. Tushin, advisor with the InsuResilience Global Partnership, for taking the time to be here. The Secretariat has always been very generous with their time in making time to be here at our presentations and to make the interventions. So thank you very much for being here today. I understand you have another commitment. However, yeah. However, until then, but thank you very much, and look forward to seeing you at next workshop, hopefully.
Thank you very much from our side as well. And I can only give that back. The SLYCAN Trust has also been very generous with your time. And I think it's a good cooperation we have here, and we're pretty grateful for that.
Thank you very much. Now we actually move on to a breakout group. So we will be having two breakout groups. We will be having two breakout groups, and there'll be two questions to answer within each of these groups. The first would, I think you'll probably discuss it within the groups. We will be putting in some of our team members in each of the groups in either of the groups to take notes. So I would kindly request you all to perhaps appoint a facilitator and also someone who could come in for the report back session as well. The team is on standby, but it would be great if those within the group could perhaps come forward and help us with this task as well. So please do give me about a minute or two, or maybe three, until I just open up the breakout rooms. And we could go on. Now it's 12:08 p.m. Indian Standard Time. We will reconvene at about 12:40 p.m. Indian Standard Time. And also, I do understand that we have some participants who are not from Sri Lanka. So if you could also bring in your experiences or any other information that you think would be valid to carry forward this discussion. So please do give me about 2 minutes until I open up the rooms, and I'll see you back here at 12:40. I am opening up the rooms now. You should see like a pop-up box which says join room. So please do join the room when the box comes in. And yeah, thank you. Hi everybody, welcome back. Maybe we'll just give it about 15 seconds more until everyone comes back in. Great, thank you very much, and welcome back. I hope your breakout group rooms were interesting and insightful. We have neared almost the end of this dialogue, and I would like to end with a quick report back from each of the groups. I would kindly like to request all groups to keep their report into about 3 to 5 minutes each. We do have detailed notes that the note takers within the group have already taken, so please do capture some of the most essential points and present them to the rest of us here. We'd maybe start off with group 1. I believe you all do have a presenter who has been appointed. Group 1, that was with the group with Dr. Sugatapala. Who would be?
Yeah, Miss Varuni will present. Yeah, thank you.
Hi,
Okay.
Sanashia.
Hi.
So let me first, shall we go to the who share? Ashan, you are sharing the screen.
Yes.
Ashan, could you please go to the first?
Yeah, 1 second.
First question. So actually, yeah. Is it possible for me to share the screen?
You should be able to, Aruni.
Yeah, there you go. Right. So actually, so we were just going through the points, and basically what we wanted to do was to reorganize and maybe revert certain areas. And we also added certain points like maybe when it comes to improving early warning systems, we might also look at that social security systems, and also when you have early warning systems, also is it in terms of the technology and
Aruni, sorry,
yes.
would you be just able to zoom in on your screen a bit?
Is it visible?
Yeah, that looks good.
Right.
Thank you.
When we look at early warnings, one thing that we were talking about was that there's a need to understand the requirements of the community. So that is one area that we have to look at, and also seasonal issues, and also to look at basically looking at the need, based on the need, having an early warning system in place. So those kind of things we'll have to enhance. Whatever the points that we have right now, we will have to kind of incorporate those elements into those. So I'm not going to go through the rest because actually it's more or less what we had, but we reworded. So I'm going to go into the next question. We came up with about 4 potential innovative methods or mechanisms. Let me also share that screen. Where is it?
Varuni, can I just add a few things just to add to your thing? Is it okay?
Yes, please. Yes.
Yeah, just to highlight, and as Varuni indicated, what we have mainly done is basically reorganizing the activities or the list here, adding few things. So we want to maybe list this one as some subheadings. So like, for example, capacity building, and then maybe new, maybe technology interventions and so on. So that's one of the suggestions. In that discussion, one of the area, I think new area came up with this use of digital technologies, ICTs and so on for this area. So that's something we added. Then of course, we also look at, other important aspects like capacity building in different areas. We reorganized the training and capacity building to highlight the importance and so on. So basically no major changes, but then we want to highlight the importance of reorganizing this one and grouping it under particular subcategories. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sugatpala. I'll also share the next one if it's possible. Can you see my screen here? Yeah.
Yes, you might have to just zoom in a bit, but yeah.
Right. So instrument, in terms of instrument that we, and mechanisms, innovative mechanisms that we came up were plot geotagging methods. So which is of course to incorporate the data collection and dissemination methods to for cultivation data, plot data, those kind of data to collect data and to disseminate. And in terms of effective implementation of weather index risk transfer, actually this is in weather index risk transfer, weather index based insurances are already in place, but this is about, we talked about enhancing those mechanisms and mainstreaming the concept basically. And also IoT-based soil sensor technologies also can be introduced as another instrument, and also business model and policy instruments for scaling. So those are the things that we talked about. Thank you, Seni.
Oh, great. You're just in time. So could we move on to the next group? And I would also kindly maybe request you to keep it to about 5 minutes so we could finish on time. I'm not sure who's presented in the next group. That was with Professor.
I will do, Sani.
Okay, right. Cool.
Yeah, we don't have a slide as such. Like there are very key important inputs given by most of our group members. Dr. Punyavardhana, Guttila Jayasinghe from the AIB, Chandralekha from the finance sector, Adisha, and Mr. Gomez and several others. So the key points highlighted was like one of the main important things was the localizing the agromet advisory, which is a key tool to address farmers' risk mitigation capacity. So there's a great need to increase the capacity building and knowledge and capacity building in this regard. It needs to go into the local level. So that's one key point that was highlighted. Then another one was localized storage, cool storages. To increase the capacity of communal-based cold storages, to increase the capacity, holding capacity of farmers to at least 1 to 2 weeks, which helps them to face severe climate incidents, store their harvest and hold on to until the prices are settled. So that's another one, which then was linked with where the finance sector came in to understand how this relates into business modalities. So they were suggesting if like mechanisms like the InsuResilience could support in providing guarantees to this sort of mechanism. So initial pilots could be done to understand the viability, market viability of these setups. Apart from that, again, seeds, Dr. Punnadan was mentioning that probably some of the seeds importation will be stopped in the coming future, so to be prepared for that, where the financial institutions to get involved with the private sector in setting up these seed production initiatives. There are some things could be done by small scale farmers or cooperative level farmers, and the other ones should be the large private sector should get involved in. All these aspects would cover the capacity of farmers to cope with climate changing situations. And AIB was suggesting like the current government insurance scheme is known by farmers, but still there are some farmers who do not know about it. Apart from that, the factors that relates to a payout and knowing this should be known by farmers, though that should be made known to them. I have a background noise, but I'll keep on speaking. The other one was again capacity building among the AIB staff and also related other government institutions to assess the losses. It takes a lot of time, and since it's covering the entire country, to quickly to assess the damages that has been happening, and continuous reporting schemes are required from the AIB and to improve and enhance the existing system. So those were the key feedbacks that I gathered. Anyone from the group could quickly feed in, Dr. Punyavardhana, maybe Adisha or someone. Mr. Guttila.
Otherwise, I think you covered everything pretty much.
I think you covered everything.
Yeah, we are done, Senasha.
Great. Thank you very much, Damita, and thanks, Varuni, for that. We are just about in time. So just once again, a quick logistical announcement. I sincerely hope all of you all have filled out the registration form that we have prepared for the day. This would actually, I mean, we want your information, and more so because it would help us take this discussion forward with you all to the next stage. A lot of the material that we saw today, that was shared earlier, has been designed and developed based on these discussions that we've had in more or less the same group. So it would be really great if we could take this discussion and drop the link again on the chat for those of you who still. Okay, thank you. Sorry, Damika Gam. Okay, it's all muted. Okay, great. So just to let you know how we move forward from here. It's unfortunate that we actually couldn't have this in person as we had planned, but we are very grateful for all those who were able to be here and who were flexible enough to be here online.
Sorry, Senasha. Quick
Yes.
question.
Sure.
If Mrs. Lahandapur hasn't made her comment, I think she wanted to speak before we
Sure.
closed.
Oh, great. I didn't see her there. Sorry, Ms. Lahandapur, please go ahead.
Well, thank you very much. Sorry for that disturbance, because I was actually instructed to do some urgent matters and I was getting calls. So sorry about that. And first of all, let me thank SLYCAN Trust and the team for this initiative. In fact, we also have faced some challenges because MIPA as the mandated agency to protect, conserve and conserve the marine and coastal environment, and also the agency to do the prevention and prevention of pollution. So one of those challenges, I mean, some of the challenges that we faced are the pollution, marine and coastal pollution, and also the challenges from the maritime activities, increased shipping and maritime activities, and also with the accelerated development activities that government has planned. There will be a lot of infrastructure development like port city, and there are many other challenges that will impact the coastal and marine environment, and that will actually add to the climate change impact. So basically, understanding some of the incidents that we faced recently, we found out that we don't have some of the, I mean, even to go for these financial tools, we don't have some baseline data. If you take the incident of MT New Diamond, even though we were able to get the cost that incurred to Sri Lankan government, and also we were able to find the captain on his negligence, we had to struggle a lot to do the environmental impact, the damage. When we are calculating the damages, it was a bit of a challenging task for us because we never had any data, baseline data in that area. And the other incident is I would like to highlight is that if you could remember, there was a vessel came to Hambantota port very recently, which was carrying contained with uranium, radioactive material. So in that kind of situation, I checked out and to see that Sri Lanka has done some baseline analysis parallel to Fukushima incident in 2012, but we have not updated, and we don't have continuous monitoring system or mechanism in place. So for us to, I mean, I think the first and foremost thing that we need to have within ourselves prior to go for prior to develop any financial tools for these activities is that to have some solid baseline information with us, data. So that is one of the areas that I would like to highlight, and would like to ask Professor Hemanti comment before I leave this previously. during the previous session. We actually have launched a SDG 14 Secretariat. So if this forum can include that as well, because according to the government policy to go for blue economy, I think there are many things that we need to do in this area, climate change activities. So if you all can include that part as well into this forum, I would really appreciate that. And there are many other areas that I need to discuss, but then just because of this at the end of the session, I don't want to comment, but then thank you very much for your inputs, and sorry that I couldn't contribute as planned because I was asked to go for another urgent discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lanka, for taking the time to actually come in at the end. We really appreciate you being here. Just for everyone else who's on the call, we will request the presentations from all of the speakers. I believe Mr. Tushin has already agreed to share his. We will reach out to the other speakers and ask them if they're okay with sharing it. And once they do, yes, Ms. Thandapur, I can hear you. Right. I'd share it with those who have requested it. If you have signed up on the registration form, you will receive it. Please do. That would really benefit us in taking this conversation forward. The video of this, we currently have it live streamed on Facebook, so that will remain on our Facebook page, and an edited version of the same will be uploaded on our YouTube channel within the next few weeks. So from our side, we are 3 minutes over time, but from our side, that's it for today. We will be reaching out to you over the coming weeks. So thank you very much to all of you all for being here, as well as your sustained interest, especially in some of the participants who've been here with us from the very beginning. So thank you once again from all of us, and until next time.